Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone. It's time for Friends and Fiction. We are really looking forward to tonight, so let's get started. I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
I'm Patti Callahan Henry.
I'm Mary Kay Andrews.
I'm Kristin Harmel.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support independent bookstores, authors, and librarians. Tonight, because of some scheduling conflicts, we are pre-taping this episode, but don't worry, it's going to be amazing because we are so excited to be welcoming the fabulous Sonali Dev, author of The Vibrant Years. So get ready for a great night.
I'm ready. It's weird to say get ready for a great night when we're sitting here in the middle of the day, right? Because Sonali's in Italy and it is night for her.
So cool.
We do the best we can. So on top of watching the show, have you all been listening to our Writer's Block Friday podcast? If not, you are really missing out on some of the most powerful conversations about writing, about publishing, about story, even songwriting and memoirs. We'll always post links under episodes each Friday when a new one drops. For our most recent episode, to start the year off with a bang, Ron and Kristy talked to Megan Taylor of All She Wrote Notes. They talked about her books, her business, about revisiting goal setting, which we talked about on the show last week, in a way that works for you, because we all do it so differently. And then coming this Friday, Ron and I talked to Armando Lucas Correa this week about his newest historical fiction, The Night Travelers. Y'all, I texted all the ladies when we finished the interview that comes out this week, and he is something special. You do not want to miss it. So listen, review, subscribe, and tell a friend if you like what you hear.
And don't forget that our new Friends and Fiction first edition subscription is available now from the indie bookstore Booktown in Manasquan, New Jersey, and features signed hardback first editions from each of the Fab Four in 2023, and a Friends and Fiction kitchen towel that says, "Dinner can wait. It's time for Friends and Fiction." You can order from them right now at Booktown with an E on the end.com. That's booktown.com. I can't do this if I'm not drinking wine, y'all.
It's like your stabilizer.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
I know, right? We also want to remind you that we are switching books over in our Fable Behind the Book book club too. So every month over on the Fable app, we pick a different book we think you'll love and we read it all together. So last month's was Louise Penny's A World of Curiosities, which was so fun to discuss. There was so much to unpack there. This month, we are bringing you a favorite guest from late November, Kevin Wilson, whose Now Is Not the Time to Panic has been talked about a lot over on the Friends and Fiction page. So head on over to the Fable app to dive into our discussion of the book, led by our very own Patti. And if you are not a member yet, just go to fable.co/friends and fiction to find out more.
All right, ladies. So we're hearing that Sonali's having a little bit of an audio issue, but we're going to go ahead and introduce her. And if she can't make it in for our warm-up chat, that is fine. And we will just bring her in for her questions as soon as that gets going. So you don't want to do like pantomime questions for her, like you can't hear us, but we'll do like, I don't know, whatever. It would be like our first episode with Audivita where Patti had to call Kristen Hanna on the phone and
hold it up to the screen.
So I don't think we could even call her on the phone.
Man, oh man. All right. Well, let's hope for the best. My pantomime skills are not very good. So Sonali Dev is a USA Today bestselling author of several novels, including Incense and Sensibility and The Emma Project.
Her novels have been on Library Journal, NPR, Washington Post, and Kirkus's Best Books of the Year list. She has won the American Library Association's Award for Best Romance, is a Rita finalist, and has been listed for the Dublin Literary Award.
I like that, the Dublin Literary Award. That would be
Not
a fun
Dublin,
one.
Georgia. I don't think it's Dublin.
I know. I think it means the real Dublin, which
so.
would be really cool.
What if it is Dublin, Georgia?
Oh, that's either way. That's very cool.
Yeah.
But Sonali was named not only one of the best, but one of the bravest romance novelists working today by Shelf Awareness.
She lives in the Chicago area with her husband, two visiting adult children. I was like, am I saying that right? And the world's most perfect dog. Her new
We're going to
novel,
argue about that.
Yeah, it was just released on December 1st. Sean, can you bring Sonali on?
Hi everyone. Hi, it's so wonderful to be here again. Hi.
Thank you so much for coming and for joining us from Italy. Oh my goodness, talk about interrupting your vacation. But tell us about your trip. What are you doing?
Oh my gosh, we've been here 11 days now, and we leave tomorrow, and today was my last day. We basically went to Sicily and Sorrento and the Amalfi Coast, and it's just been, I'm full of cannoli and pasta, basically a whole lot of ricotta and wheat. Yes. It's been amazing.
That sounds fantastic. Amazing. We wish that we had come to Italy to record with you. I think
I would have loved that. You know, yeah. I mean, all of us, we've got to do that. We've got to do this girls, vacation the entire time. It's just my husband and I. And I don't even remember the last time just the two of us went off somewhere for so long. And it's been great. We met his brother for a few days with his new girlfriend, but it's been amazing. But I have been thinking, my gosh, I have to come back here with my girlfriends.
Okay.
I hope
we count. I hope we count as girlfriends. Yeah.
For sure. Well, ladies, Sonali's trip inspired me to ask all of you something. And listeners, please answer this in the comments too, because we want to hear what you have to say. So some of us might have been traveling a lot this year. And for some of us, we might not have been traveling at all for years on end. So I thought it might be fun to give some suggestions of books that can take you on a vacation without ever leaving home. So ladies, I have a twofer for you. One, which of your books do you think offers the best escape for readers? And two, what is one of your favorite books that takes you away to a wonderful place, either real or imagined? So we're gonna give our guest a minute to think about that. And MKA, we're gonna let you go first.
Well, my novel Beach Town, which came out a few years ago, it takes the reader from California to a fictional beach town in Florida. The protagonist is a movie location scout. So I had a great time researching that because I started in California and ended up in a town called Cedar Key in the Florida Panhandle. So I think that book is a good escape. And since I love armchair travel books, I'd have to choose Peter Mail's A Year in Provence to take me to Provence to sip wine and eat cheese and fix up an old chateau or villa.
Ah, that sounds wonderful.
Oh, that just made me like my shoulders drop out of my. Like,
See, this is why we need escape books, right?
Exactly. Okay, so for me, I think many of my novels are set in France. So I suppose if you want a trip to France and not specifically to Provence, you might pick up one of my books. Several of them are set in Paris, but I actually think that a really fun place to travel is the Champagne region. And that's something I tried to put into The Winemaker's Wife, which takes place in the Champagne region of France. And I think there's something really special about traveling to an area whose history you have learned and that you understand. I think that makes the travel that much richer. And I'm just fascinated by the history of Champagne. So I might recommend, of my books, The Winemaker's Wife. In terms of another book to recommend, I think I would choose, especially in honor of Sonali being in Italy right now, I think I would choose Lisa Scottolini's Eternal, which was set in Rome, or her upcoming Loyalty, which is set in Sicily, as books that will transport you entirely to a different place. Nobody writes Italy like Lisa, and both of these books really just shine for their full immersion in the Italian culture.
Love it.
That's awesome. I mean, now we went to Italy when the kids were young. And it's a totally different experience when you're dragging around young kids. So
Sure.
I'm thinking of all the places now I want to see without doing that.
I haven't been since I was like, I think a senior, like after my senior year of high school, and it was with all of my friends. So you can imagine that was probably a different trip than I would take now.
We would
it was fun, but in a very different way.
Well, I mean, everywhere we experience depends on the people. Like if you're dragging little kids or you're in college or so, you know, you experience it differently. But for books, for a vacation, I might have to take out the word vacation, but if I'm thinking about one of my own books, mostly because I'm so deep inside it right now, but my new one, The Secret Book of Flora Lee, takes you from Cape Cod, Massachusetts to the countryside in a small hamlet in England. And even though I don't think it's much of a vacation, it's definitely immersive. If you love the British countryside or the beach, you know, a beach location. So I visited all the places in the book this summer, and the beauty of that place, I really hope it comes across in the pages, because I'm struck again and again by its astounding kind of mystical beauty. And then books I've read, I'm not sure that this counts as a vacation, but anything Philippa Gregory writes about old England and the royals, to me, I want to visit there. And you can't unless we had a time capsule machine. But for the right here, right now, I just read an advanced copy of a book by Adrienne Brodeur called Little Monsters. That's not coming out till June. And it's set in Cape Cod. And I cannot even believe how I felt every nuanced part of that little arm-shaped part of Massachusetts. It was as if I was visiting. So.
Oh, that's great. All right, Sonali, you're up. Our world traveler who inspired the question. Take it away.
Well, right now I just don't want to leave Italy, but I think I have, you know, as escape goes, the vibrant ears, and I'm not. I actually wrote a lot of this book. The family hails from a part of India called Goa, which which is a beach town, which has always been a little bit more free and wild. And kind of a confluence of Roman Catholicism and Hinduism and Islam. Like it's this melting pot in terms of culture and food and all of that, but it's also our shoreline, so the Arabian Sea. And it is so there's it's even back when I was growing up and India was more traditional than it is now. You would find people, you know, in bikinis and laying on the beach. There was a lot of the hippie culture, and you know, it had this wonderful vibe. Even now, like if you say Goa to anyone who's been to India, there's that instant kind of, you know, it's just the sun and endless meals. You cannot get a cup of coffee in less than half hour. Every meal takes, 4 hours. So if you're in a hurry, don't go to Goa. Don't come to Italy. But so there's this wonderful sunshine ocean thing, I think, with the character Bindu in my book, who kind of embodies her hometown in that way. And my grandmother is from there, and amazingly, the last name of the characters in the Vibrant Years is Desai, and my grandmother was that's her maiden name. So there's
fun.
a lot of this whole personal kind of thing, and a lot of fish. Oh my gosh, I just want to eat Goan fish now. So definitely, I think Vibrant Years, although most of it is set in Naples, Florida, which is also beach and a whole different beach vibe.
Beautiful.
But yeah, doing research there was fun. It was completely different from what I expected. And, it has this wonderful sparkling, beach towns in America have a whole different vibe than anywhere else in the world. There's the Lily whatever stores, and kind of the outdoors cafe kind of culture, but in a very American way, and that's really hard to explain until you have traveled to beach towns around the world. So I would say The Vibrant Years kind of, these two whole different beach vibes. I think it does, it does well to juxtapose those on each other. And it was interesting when Kristen said New England, because I think one of the people who really takes me there is Kristen Higgins. And I had actually, I
Yeah.
was going to say a different book, and I will say, because if you ask me about other people's books, I cannot say one because where's the fun in that? But I think Kristen's Out of the Clear Blue Sky, and every one of it, I think she does detail and she does culture in a way. When people say culturally rich books, you kind of tend to think someone outside of the West. But I think the best books for me, even American, America set books, are the ones that make me feel like I have been inside of a culture, because America has all these subcultures, and New England is one of the richest, most identifiable subcultures in terms of how families interact, and of course the landscape and all that. And no one does that, I think, better than Kristen Higgins, where you actually feel like you're part of a New England family, right from how they talk to each other, and the clenched what is the word I'm looking for, way of showing emotion and
Stiff
all of
upper
that.
lip.
It's just so.
Yeah.
It's what?
The stiff upper lip. It's very British, very like, don't.
The stiffish upper lip. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was going to say emotional constipation, but probably stiff upper lip is a better is a better way of saying it. But that's so her, for I think the cultural immersiveness, and I mean, this is not so much a vacation thing, but if you're a Las Vegas kind of person, then I think one of the most fun books I have read recently is Alicia Rye's Partners in Crime, which is a romp across Las Vegas. So it's kind of The Hangover meets Indian matchmaking, if you will.
Oh,
And it is just so much fun. So much fun.
oh, it sounds fun.
That sounds awesome. I gotta check that out. I could answer this question in like a million different ways. I'm like Sonali, but the first thing that kind of came to mind was Ellen Hildebrand's The Hotel Nantucket, which I'm sure a lot of you have read. But I just loved that book. I just felt like it totally took me to Nantucket and like on a vacation, but it was like the fun parts too, and like the fun parts and the relaxing parts, and kind of a sneak peek behind the scenes. And anyway, I just thought that was like such a fun book. And she writes Nantucket very well, of course, as someone who lives there and knows so much about it. And I was actually going to say something different for mine, but now that I really think about it, I got to say my forthcoming The Summer of Songbirds might be my best like take you away book, because it's literally set at a summer camp, which is, a pretty great escape. And yeah, I can't wait to share that with y'all. But I really think like it's set at a summer camp, but I think the point and the hope is that it's a kind of story that makes you think about, that place for you when you were growing up, whether it's like, a family beach trip that you went on, or your grandparents' house, or just anywhere that gave you those like fun summer memories, no matter how big or how small. So hopefully people will feel like they're on a vacation when they read it.
Yeah, we're all going to camp this summer.
Yeah,
I know.
Absolutely.
Camp Songbird. Okay, so we've got so much to discuss with Sonali, but before we dive into her fabulous new book, The Vibrant Years, we want to remind you to visit our Friends in Fiction bookshop.org page, where you can find Sonali's books and books by the four of us and all of our guests at a discount. By shopping from our bookshop page, you support local bookstores, your favorite authors, and Friends in Fiction all at the same time.
Yep. All right. Well, Sonali, let's get to our questions for you. And we have quite a few. So we're excited to dive in.
Okay, I'm going to start us off. You ready?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, The Vibrant Years was the first. This is so cool. It was the first novel in Mindy Kaling's new imprint. Huge congratulations, Sonali. That is so cool. And when it was released, you were on Good Morning America talking with Mindy about it. And she was also sharing the news on The View and Drew Barrymore. and so many amazing places. That must have been surreal for you. Can you tell us about the moment you found out and got the news?
Absolutely. So yes, this has been, as you can imagine, the most exciting thing. I think I say this, to my kids and my husband. I'm like, maybe giving birth and getting married might be up there, but this kind of, feels
like a tie.
feels like a work. Definitely, because this feels like something I've pined for and worked for much more than I had to for, having kids or getting married, which was, you're supposed to do it. I did it. What's the big deal? But this was something, if you had asked me last year, what is the one thing that you would like to happen for your career? I actually had a vision board with Mindy's picture on it, which is just the cheesiest, most ridiculous thing. But you know what? People who do vision boards, they work. So it was
Awesome.
amazing. And the way I found out was that my editor emailed me on a Thursday. You guys are going to love this, because she emails me on a Thursday and says, something really fabulous has happened, but I cannot tell you about it until Monday. Can we meet on Monday?
Oh,
It's like, what? It's Thursday. What's wrong with you?
torture!
It was
Who
so
would?
and she said, I am so sorry, but I swear you're not going to hate me on Monday. So she's like, just know that if it was bad news, I wouldn't, or if it was average news. And man, the longest weekend of my life. And amazingly, my daughter, I was fortunately driving to visit my daughter in college, and we were going to go to the Hassan Minhaj, comedy show. And I always say that kind of Hassan held my hand until, Mindy came along, and they're two of the biggest, I think, today, South Asian entertainers. They've changed the landscape for South Asian, storytellers and creators. And so it's kind of a really weirdly serendipitous thing that happened in that one weekend. And so of course, when that meeting happened with, all of Mindy's people, Mindy wasn't there, but, everyone from Mindy's book studio and my agent and my editor, this was the first time in my life that the entire call, I couldn't make words. I was like, I can talk, guys. I usually can talk, but I couldn't say. I just couldn't. I was so it was the most surreal thing, and I kept texting my agent even after and said, can they take it back? So it was kind of. It was really, really lovely. And then then it's just, the whole thing has been such a ride. I got to meet Drew. I got to meet Mindy. And the whole thing.
So
I could spend the entire hour talking about what meeting Drew Barrymore and Mindy Kaling is like. But I won't do
We'd
it.
be here for it.
It's been,
We'd be here for it.
it's
I
been
know.
And did
I know.
I will
I
say-
texted. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kristy.
No, I was just going to say, I know I texted you this, but I think Mindy Kaling, I mean, she's like one of my absolute like top favorite famous people. Like I have all of her blogs, and like the Mindy Project's one of my favorite shows. So when I saw that, I was like, this is the greatest, craziest thing that's ever happened in the world. I mean, it was just so incredible. Incredible.
And
did I hear you
one
right?
last thing. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Did I
Can
hear
I say
you
one
right that
last
you
thing?
have? Yes, we're overlapping. Go ahead, Sonali. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say one last thing about the whole Mindy thing. And I think what you said, Kristy, is exactly why I think that with Mindy, I mean, I would have taken any celebrity pimping my book, honestly, and anyone making a movie out of it, I will, bring it on. I'm happy for it. But I think with Mindy specifically, I think because she's a writer and because I admire her writing so much, I think The Office, her stuff is absolutely brilliant. I think it kind of changed comedy. I think with her, late night, Sex Lives of College Girls, all of that, the way that she mixes this this very vulnerable humor that comes from a place of emotion and place from where you have no no shields. It's that, which is why it's cringy, but in this wonderfully warm way. When the way she does that, I've actually analyzed it. Like I play those scenes and I see how she writes them. So I have done a lot of craft work with her work. So when it was her, it was just something completely, I have no words.
That's awesome.
Okay, well, let's talk about the book. In the vibrant years, Bindu, Ali, and Cully are just the wonderfulest trifecta. And they make this multi-generational story burst with warmth and heart and humor. But something that really stood out to me is that Bindu is Ali's mother-in-law and her ex-mother-in-law at that, which is somewhat unusual because we generally tend to see the mother-daughter stories. So why did you choose to write the story from this perspective?
I think one of the reasons is in your question. It's it's very close to a mother-daughter relationship. In terms of family, it's the next. It's the next closest thing, and I feel like it doesn't get explored. I also have this theory that women, that society has kind of labeled us as pulling each other, as human crabs, right? We're supposed to pull each other down. We're supposed to kind of be snarky and negative with one another. And every single woman in my life, I wouldn't be who I am. I mean, look at the four of you. It's our female friendships is really what make us who we are, right? Our female relationships. And yet over and over again, we're expected to buy this lie that somehow we are against each other. And I see this, my mother-in-law is as different a person from me as you can imagine, in terms of the opportunity she's had, the life she's had. She's my husband's from a much more traditional Indian family than I am. My mother-in-law has never worn anything but a sari. She sleeps in a sari. If that gives you any,
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know if that kind of gives you a cultural. So that is her comfort zone, right? She was born, married into, and has lived in a 1 kilometer radius her whole life.
Wow.
So it's this very specific kind of woman, and yet she is one of the most badass women I know, but in this really, really soft way. And so here is a person who had a very little overt voice, very few opportunities in terms of, making her own life. And here is a person, every single time I have an opportunity and I take it, she says, "You better, and what can I do to help?" So it's amazing to me that, and it's not just my mother-in-law, my husband's also from a joint family. So it's my three mothers-in-law, because my father-in-law and his two brothers and their wives are all my mothers-in-law, right? And all three women are exactly the same, different personalities. And the love and acceptance that I have gotten from them from day one has been incredible. I wish I could just share it, and I think the book is a way to share that. Now Bindu is much more like my mom in personality, but in relationship, and my mother is like this with her, with my sister-in-law. And so this, I don't think we could be the women we are if past generations of women weren't excited about us having more than them, which is an amazing thing when you consider it, right? That we have so much more in terms of choice, in terms of respect, all of that, right? Identity that our mothers and grandmothers didn't have, and yet they literally have forced us to get it and taken joy from the thing they didn't have instead of trying to stop us. And I kind of love to, my story is always, I think, go there and speak to that. And so Bindu just was going to be, and the dynamic of her son and her is also important to the book, and that through the lens of her relationship, with her daughter-in-law, I love how that worked for them.
Oh, beautiful.
Awesome. No. Yeah, me too. I just thought it was such an interesting perspective. And I think you brought something really special to that relationship, because I think a lot of times we read that sort of stereotypical, like, butting heads. My mother-in-law hates me. We don't get along, blah, blah, blah. And this was just like, it was just such a nice spin on that relationship. And I think one of the things I loved most about this book was Bindu herself. I mean, she's certainly one of the oldest characters in the book, but she's probably the most, to use your word, vibrant. And so just from, her dating life to her general attitude, she just is someone who kind of radiates joy and positivity and all these amazing things. So what are you hoping that readers will take away from her character?
I think for sure with her and anyone else I write, I think it's that sense that I'm okay exactly the way I am. It takes us a long time to get there, right? For and every one of us, women especially, it takes us so long to figure out, my gosh, I'm fabulous and my life is fabulous. And everything I was told about what size I need to be, how my house needs to look, what my children need to be like, what my cooking needs to be like, all of that was almost, was a lie. And for us to make our way around being okay in our skin, I think that's what I want, always for a person to get out of my books. When you read my book, I want you to get this renewed sense of joy in your own skin, like I am okay, more than even the I'm enough, which is a much more, me thing to say, but the fact that I'm okay, I'm great the way I am, which doesn't mean that regret isn't real, which doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes, but it's not the end. No matter what age I am, I can set that straight. So this book is so much about FOMO, right? I say FOHMO in the book all the time, fear of having missed out. And I think one of the things through Bindu's journey was that, for us to feel like we all have fear of having missed out, but it's not too late. I mean, it's not too late. You can do it now.
I love that. This was actually like a life coaching session that we didn't know we were going to do.
I know.
I really love that. What a great moral to the story, and just what a great message that I think, and what a great message to hear, especially at the beginning of the new year, when we can kind of set our new intentions and set the new things that we're hoping for our lives, just to be reminded of that. I that's perfect, Sonali. Thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to ask you about your 4 novels before the Vibrant Years, which were retellings of classic novels featuring the Rajays. Did I say that right? The Rajays? Sorry. A family, okay. A family of Indian immigrants with delectable stories. So I imagine that a retelling is different in a lot of ways from writing a novel like The Vibrant Years, because while you have a lot of freedom and you certainly put very much your own touch on it, you were also sort of sticking to a script of sorts because you had the framework of those retellings. But what made you decide to veer away from that family and those retellings? And for you, how was writing The Vibrant Years different after those 4 books?
I love that question. And I think the thing for me is, we were talking about kind of marching to your own drum, right? Even when I came up with the Rajays, I had always envisioned 4 books because I have 4 favorite Jane Austen novels. And, don't hate me for this, don't at me, but the other 2 don't exist for me. So my 4 favorites were always the 4 I was going to retell. And I knew this going in. And there were times when I was told, maybe, cut 1 down, let's do 3. And I was like, no, I'm doing these 4. I'm doing them exactly like this. So I always knew, but also to me, they were never retellings. They were homages to the stories I learned from reading Jane Austen.
That's
right.
awesome.
So it was always, it was to me always, because I blame Jane for who I am. When my husband and I fight, I'm like, take it up with Jane. And it's so she made it okay for me to be who I am very young. I read her in middle school, and she kind of set the tone for me being okay with myself. And because she was the first time I read female characters who kind of could, who had self-worth, who asked for things, didn't die because of it, but got them, the kind of stuff we weren't seeing in other classics and books. Yeah. So I was always going to write those books my way. I kind of had very general themes that I wanted to highlight, but it was always my book. So it never felt different in that way, because I was never trying to hit points, or I was never trying to. The seed came from Jane, and the rest of it came from Sonali. Not to talk about myself in third person, but. But so it wasn't that different, because I knew just the basics were going to be that, and the rest of the story was mine, if that makes sense.
It does.
So
And
Okay,
of
but
course, vibrant is.
what's your problem with Mansfield Park?
Oh my God. What book is that again?
Who wrote that? Who
She hasn't
wrote
heard
it?
of that one.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, Sonali, I want to tap back to something that kind of got buried when we first started talking, because you rushed right over it, but I've been sitting here wondering about it. And that is your vision board. And you said Mindy was on your vision board, which is so fascinating, because we talk about that all the time, and we talk about making intentions, and we use the kind of vague word manifestation. But dang, girl, you did it. So I want to hear about your vision board and how you use that. Talk to us.
It's so nebulous, right? It's so intangible, and yet it's so tangible, because I mean, I can't imagine that. And we've all, I'm sure you've all done this and felt it, but I do believe that when you genuinely ask the universe for something, it's I mean, it's amazing. And I think setting an intention has to do with the effort then you put into it. Like, once you've stated something, your own behavior and your own attitude changes. So there's a science to it. It's not quite so much as, oh, universe, I want $10 million, and and then I'm going to take a nap and it's going to happen. Not quite like that. But over and over again, I think in my life, I've seen this happen. Anderson's bookstore is our neighborhood bookstore. So it's like 10 minutes walking from my home. It was on our way to the library. Every time I passed it, some huge big name author was signing there, because they've had everyone from, every author you can think of has signed there. And every time I passed and the sign was up, I used to actually touch their their window display, and kind of, I'm like, rub off on me. This was before I was published.
That's
So
awesome.
Anderson's was my live vision board.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, someday I'm going to sign here. They've done every one of my signings, and and this was before I was even published, and this was even before I finished my first novel. So there's something to it, I think. And I actually was on I've never said this publicly. I don't say you guys get this.
We're pulling it out of you.
No way.
Dibs at it. But I was actually on the phone with my agent, and it's been a journey, as it has been for all of us, right? You know how hard we work, and how much how much you have to hustle in this business. And I will go out and say it's harder to do it, when you're an author of color, because there's really no comps. When my first book came out, there was nothing that looked like it on the shelves. No one knew where to shelf me. No one knew what, it was. We've all, and it's not just me, it's everybody else, who's an author of color, who's kind of literally been part of this paradigm shift in publishing, right? And it's been a very, very strange, we have, bruises on our heads from banging against that glass wall, brick wall, glass brick wall. And so, having said all of that, I'm on the phone with my agent saying, come on, what is it going to take? Why does it, what am I going to? And she said to me, at this point, it almost feels like all success, you've got to, oh my gosh, she's going to kill me for saying this, but I'm saying it. It's almost like you want a big name, some teenager with 1 million following on TikTok to fall in love with your book, or you need a celebrity to get behind it.
There you
And
go.
I was like, then why doesn't a celebrity come to pick up my book and said the words? So I am intentional. I also have all my life, and certainly from the time that I got serious about publishing and being published, at the start of every year, I will write down a list of all the things I hope to accomplish. Sometimes it happens that year, sometimes it's happened, 5 years later. But my intention, if I clarify it, it's easy for me to
I love
follow.
that.
That's
Yeah.
so
That's
great.
great. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Sonali, that is so interesting. I know we're all like, we all feel the same. So we really understand what you're saying. If you wouldn't mind just sticking around for another minute, we have more to talk to you about, but just a couple announcements first.
Okay, quickly before we get back to Sonali, and I'm sitting here thinking about my vision board, like in the back of, and we talked a lot about intentions last week, Sonali. So, like, there is it, and you're right. It's not saying them and then sitting back like, oh, let me see if a celeb calls me. But like, it sets in you the intention to do the work that might make that happen, and I love that. So. Meanwhile, we have so much great news about our 4 releases this year. It's not next year anymore. It's this year. All 4 of us have a book coming out this year, and we are going to be doing 5 at least, we might add some more, live Friends in Fiction events. The first one will be in Columbus, Ohio on April 26th, and there is information about that. It's on our website, right? Or just on our Facebook page? We'll make sure it gets on our website.
We'll make sure to get it on. I couldn't swear that it's on our website.
Yeah, it'll be there. But it's going to be an amazing event in Columbus, Ohio at the library. And then we have a live launch event for the launch of my new book on May. And so on May 1st, we are all going to be in Charleston together at the Historical Riviera Theater. The VIP tickets are nearly sold out, which is crazy. So put it on your calendar now, and the ticketing link is live on Buxton Books website. And I'm hoping that any second we get to talk about Kristin's launch, which will be in June, and Kristy's launch in July, and Mary Kay's for her Christmas book next September. We don't have a date yet, but of course we're all going to be there. So stay tuned for details.
Stay tuned. You will not want to forget also about the Friends in Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, aka PB&J. That's a lot of initials there, aka PB&J.
Yeah.
They host authors for monthly chats. They also have regular happy hours with our Writer's Block podcast host, Ron Block, and they keep everybody in the loop about suggested reads and upcoming releases. So join them on January 23rd when Zibby Owens will be there to discuss her memoir, Bookends.
All right, Sonali, we have one last question for you. Can you give us any hints about what you're working on next?
Yes, because my first couple days in Italy were actually finishing up the final edits and sending them in. So yeah, that time when the book is like boiling in your head, my first week here I was still kind of purging that. So the next one is a story of a friendship breakup. So I think again we get to talk so much about romantic estrangement and romantic breakups, but I think female friendships are true soulmates. I'm so glad my husband is not here hearing all of this. But I do think that when your girl friendships break up, the toll of that is almost in some ways more painful. But this is a story of two friends whose friendship breaks up over a surrogacy arrangement that kind of doesn't go as they planned it. And 27 years after the child was born, and it's been 27 years since they've talked, she finds out through a DNA test that something happened that I don't know about, and follows it. And it's kind of this, I think, beautiful love story between two women, and how much they gave and what it took from them.
Wow.
I got chills.
Do you have a title, Sonali?
Yes. Am I allowed to tell you? Yes, I think I am. It's Lies and Other Love Languages.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's great.
Gorgeous.
Y'all you heard it here first, y'all.
Always breaking news right here. Always.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sonali, for visiting with us all the way from Italy. We absolutely had the best time with you, and we cannot wait for everyone who has not yet read The Vibrant Years to pick up a copy from our bookshop.org page or wherever they buy their books.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Sonali. Thank you for coming.
This was so fun. Thanks. Bye.
What a pleasure you are. Good night.
Eat some cannoli for us.
Yeah,
I know. And pasta.
All right, everybody. Don't forget that you can find all of our back episodes on YouTube. We're live there every week, just like we are on Facebook. And if you subscribe, you won't miss a thing. Tune in next Wednesday when we will be joined by Laura Zigman and Elle Casamano. Have a great night.
Good night, y'all.
Everyone. Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.